Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Authors are interesting folks. They spend a lot of time at the computer, they do research, and they've come up with a lot of funny things. And of course, some are true, some are not true. But when I met Fred Berri, who wrote Cousin's Bad Blood, I knew that he was really different. He came up with some wonderful ideas about what it was like to be Sicilian, to come to the United States, and what happened to a lot of people who were very successful. And of course, it was in the book, there was some sex and some murder and all sorts of things. But he's quite a character. And so he's now on our radio show. He's calling in. And I'm so happy to hear from you again, Fred.
Well, thank you, Anita. I really appreciate you inviting me back, and it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, so have you written another book yet?
I did. I wrote another novel. It's called 10 Cents a Dance.
Wait. It's what? 10 cents a dance?
Yes. And if people can remember the dance halls,
right?
Way back in the day, and it's about the dance hall girls, and they were called taxi dances. And the reason is because you get into a taxi, you take a short ride, and you pay your fare, and you get out. Well, the same thing with the dance halls, the girls. What you did was you'd walk in and you'd buy a string of tickets, maybe 10 tickets or so, 10 cents on each ticket, and you'd give the girls a ticket, and you'd take a spin on the dance floor for 3 minutes. And
so, was there any funny business going on, or are you just dancing?
Sometimes there was a lot of monkey business going on.
Let's just get down right to it. That's what I want to know. How come you haven't sent me this book? Don't you want us to do something with it?
Sure.
Let's talk about that another time. But I love the 10 cents a dance. What a great title.
Yeah, it's about homicides and the serial killer who's killing the girls from the dance hall.
Oh no, poor things! All they want is a dance.
Yeah.
They get a murder, right?
Yeah, and I created a new character, a homicide detective called Johnny Zero, and he works well with trying to get the serial killer captured, and he has to travel and work with Interpol to do that, and it's a really interesting story and some characters. So
where do you come up with this? Do you sleep at night?
Actually, lately I haven't been.
Johnny Zero, huh? That's a good name too.
Yeah, it's a great name. So I'm on my third novel. It'll be another Johnny Zero featuring homicide detective Johnny Zero.
That's a great idea to have it as a serial killer and a serial hero, right?
Right, exactly right.
So you're hoping, I'm sure, that you could get some agent or somebody to make a movie out of this.
I would love that. That would be great.
Well, I'm very anxious to see this 10 Cents a Dance, but I was reading your book again. As a matter of fact, it's funny, I'm embarrassed I don't have it in front of me because I gave it to someone. I don't remember who I gave it to, and I never got it back. That's the problem with giving books away.
That is
I hate that. So I have a new rule. If I give you a book, I'm going to write it down, tattoo it on my chest. And the only way I'm going to get it off is if you give it back to me. But I'm really upset. But anyway, I do have the review, and I do remember the book, and it was, it has this bloody look on the front with with blood coming down it. But I want to go back to what we were just talking about. So when you think about this, I want to go back to that book. And I was thinking about Al Capone because recently Al Capone's home on Palm Island, where I had lived in my first marriage, they have that house up for sale.
Ah.
And, of course, my kids used to play with the kids who lived in that house, not the Al Capone people, because that was long after. But, that has that entrance underground. It goes right out to the water so he could escape. And I know that your first book was filled with stuff like that.
Yes. And it was an interesting time. Well, my particular character came to America from Italy when he was 12 years old. And, he came to a new country, he had to learn the new ways, the new language, and he did that. He was a very intelligent man. Michael Pellegrino is a character there. And through the years, he learned business. And because of what was happening in the country, he went into the bootlegging business, and he was called a gentleman bootlegger. And from bootlegging, went into loan sharking and became one of the most powerful people in the country, even helping to get someone elected into the White House.
Oh, yeah, you really have a fanciful imagination. And I don't remember, what did you were in finance, weren't you, when you were working? I forget now. Yeah, you were in finance.
I was with one of the largest banking institutions in the country. I was my title was a financial specialist, and I did investments in annuities and investments of that nature. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I have to just say that you and you live where? Don't you live in Hollywood or somewhere? I forget now.
Well, no, I lived in Jupiter for 24 years. Then I relocated to Port St. Lucie for the grandbaby.
Oh, yeah. I remember that you were moving somewhere else. Okay. Mm-hmm. So are you happy with your life in the retirement? Or you're not retired,
yes,
you're writing books.
I just love writing. As I said, I'm working on my third novel. And it's always something that I really wanted to do. And what's interesting is with Cousins, Bad Blood, when I started writing that many years ago, I even had a different title. These individuals came from Italy, and they wound up in downtown Manhattan. Eventually, they relocated to the Bronx, and parts of the Bronx, one particular part, they wound up in Riverdale, which was the upper echelons along the Hudson River there. And I just brought out some facts about the Bronx and growing up there and what he had to do, and just taking stories that I heard as a youngster growing up. You sit around the kitchen table,
right,
and you hear these stories for hours and hours and hours, and then usually someone says at the end, you should write a book. Well,
right. And you did. And
exactly right.
So let's, people who are listening now, you can get this on Amazon.com. It's called Cousins, COUSIN', Bad Blood. And Fred's last name is Berri. You'll love the book. It's exciting, everything that he said. And then hopefully we're going to hear all about this 10 cents a dance. Your titles are good. 10 cents a dance would... Because I do now remember about that. Of course, it turns out now it's not so happy. I can hear that. Johnny Zero's there as the champion, but there's some monster guy taking advantage of these poor women.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So what's the second one called?
The second one is 10 Cents a Dance.
But you said you have a serial. So it's...
The third one. The third one is Bullets Before Dawn.
Bullets Before Dawn.
Yeah, it's about murders in Chinatown in New York.
Oh, my heavens. You are good. I love your imagination, and I'm so glad that you're doing this. You see, I had an author on yesterday, this morning, as a matter of fact, if you were listening, Susan Sussman, who's written like 20 books, and she's really very well, she's well received. She's very smart. And she told me that she's still in a lot of writing classes, and people get together, and people don't know sometimes how to get started and what they're doing. And her advice is take a fresh piece of paper, get yourself a notebook, and 3-ring notebook. And if you think of something that happened, you could have been, she talked about a Christmas story that because she was Jewish, she couldn't ever have a Christmas tree. She wanted a Hanukkah bush. No one would let her have any of these things. And then she eventually, as she got married, that was something she went ahead and did. So it turns out it was part of a story. And she said, so if you have little things that happen, maybe your dog did this or did that, write it down. And before you know it, it evolves into something. Is that your advice?
It is true. Exactly right. I keep a pen and pad next to my bed. Also, I carry one with me all the time. I have one in the car. I carry one on my person. There's one next to my bed, and you have to, because it's like I said before. When you hear something or you think of something and you write it down, and I relate it to like a Rubik's cube. You turn, you twist, you put it upside down, and fiction is basically the truth as compared to Rubik's cube. You turn it, you twist it, you turn it upside down, and you turn everything around, and voila, you have a story. And it's just like, sitting around hearing all these stories and taking some of this and some of that and putting it together and putting it into a blender and shaking it up, and there you have a story.
Fred, you are so intelligent. I love listening to you. This is fascinating. And so I was going to, though, ask you about this. Do you, these characters that you come up with, do you see them in your mind's eye, and then how do you develop them so that people can see them?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yes, I with the first, with all my books, it's almost like you become friends with them, regardless of what their walk of life is. And I didn't want to stop writing because I was so involved with them. They were part of my life. Yes, you develop them from other people, other situations that you've come across in your life, and you develop that character. And sometimes you're like a pantster. You fly by the seat of your pants, and yet some other times you want to develop it to a point where you want people to understand that person and their emotion, and you have to really delve into it and put yourself in that person's place and have a conversation with them and write that conversation down in the book, just like you and I are having. Absolutely
amazing. I was thinking my husband is an author, and he wrote a book about 2 or 3 years. One book called "Saving the Moon," and we're getting it back to go to publication, and we were reading it to just make sure before it was published, and we were reading, and he sits there and he said, "I don't remember that at all." And he's so involved. And I said, "Well, how'd you come out?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "It just came. It's like with astronauts up in the sky." I said, "You're kidding." No, he said, "I don't really remember that." Yeah, does that happen to you sometimes?
Yeah. It happens sometimes. And how is Bill?
Oh, Bill's going to be 93 today.
Oh, my goodness. Tell him happy birthday.
I will. He's just wonderful. I know you met him at the expo.
Yeah, I did. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
I enjoy his stories.
Yeah, he is good. But so he's finishing this book because and so he's got 2 more that he's working on. One is called Orgasm, and the other one, I forget what it is. Let's see, I forget what the title. But his mind is so fertile, and he just goes on and on. And now, as one ages, it's harder because he's such a good typist. It's harder for him to do the typing, so there's a way you probably know if you just speak into the computer.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect. You have to make some corrections. But so I say to anyone listening now, you hear Fred. Fred is not a spring chicken. You're in your 70s?
Yeah, I just turned 71.
Okay, so see, you have 30 years now to keep writing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so people who are retired, as Fred was saying, you have so many stories. Why don't you put them down and start writing?
I agree. Yes, everyone has a story within them.
Everyone has a story. Some are more interesting because you've lived quite a life, obviously.
Well, yes, it has been quite a life. And speaking about writing, I found it interesting where your previous guest said about a spiral notebook, and that's how I started. Even when I was working, I wanted to write all the time. I did write articles in the past for trade magazines, and I've written articles for online magazines. They're called e-zines, and I just enjoy it. I started writing the story in a spiral notebook, and I was going to call it a completely different title, and I was going to call it Out of the Bronx, and lo and behold, what came along was a movie with Chaz Palmieri called A Bronx Tale. And I says, I can't continue writing with a similar title like that, so right. I had to change it completely all around. The spiral notebook was pretty full, and so I went through each page and I was crossing it out and changing it, and it became kind of hectic. But I did that, and everything was in red and blue and different notes on the pages, and I changed the story completely. And where I lived, I had 4 big sliders, and what I did was like a storyboard. I got all the little stickies, and I made a storyboard as to the characters and each plot and where I wanted them. And as time went on, I stopped using the spiral notebook and started going to the computer. But what I found interesting with the sticky notes on the slider was that after I'd make my notes on particular things or where I wanted certain characters, I would be moving them around on the sliders with all these sticky notes. The 4 sliders were filled with sticky notes as a storyboard, and they became so unstuck with the stickiness, I had to use Scotch tape on them.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah, I'm thankful that my wife put up with me.
Oh, I was going to ask you but no, that is so interesting. So I could see as you were talking, how that was going, and then you could pull them down, put them back up in something else. And so that's a good thing for people to think about. Get yourself those yellow sticky notes. Boy, don't we wish that we invented them.
Right.
And it's such a simple thing, right? A little sticky note. Yeah. But that makes a lot of sense. And now don't throw your notebooks away, because when you become famous, you'll have to have them in the museum.
There you go. I like that idea.
Yeah,
now today on the computers you can have that sticky note.
That's right.
Also.
Yeah, that's true.
And with my computer, I have 4 screens.
What?
4 monitors.
You have 4 monitors?
Yeah, 4, so I can have different subjects up. I make a page for characters. I make a page for notes. I make a page for the novel itself when I'm writing. And then I have another screen that I use for Google and for research as I'm writing.
You are amazing. You see, all your training in the financial world and everything you did before, it's coming back here to roost. I've never heard what you just said. You have 4 monitors, and so you have to go back and forth to the monitors. Is that difficult?
No, it's not, because you should set it up where you can take whatever you have on monitor 3 and you can move it right over to monitor 4, the whole page, if you wanted to, just like the sticky notes on the glass sliders.
I'm sitting here shaking my head. I love what you've been saying. I wish you were here in the studio. Yeah. But I'm very, very thrilled. I have to say, we are actually looking for a book of the month for December. So you and I ought to talk about that 10 cents a dance. Do you have, but you don't, you're too young to have done any of the 10 cents a dance. How do you know about that?
Well, they were very prevalent. I think they started in the 20s, but I think the last one closed from my research was in 1960. It was somewhere in there, 1960, 61. So they were around. I'm from New York, living in the Bronx, and my wife was from Manhattan. There was a very, very big one down in Manhattan. So that was around for quite a while, so I was familiar with it.
Now, I don't know if it's in your book, because I know there's murder in your book, but nowadays we have online dating. And so I wonder if when people went in to have a dance, if they liked the person and then they went out with them, if there are any romantic stories that there have been marriages from that. Do you know? Well,
it's interesting because when Johnny Vero came in to investigate at this dance hall, which is called the Flamingo Room, many people think it was just a place for prostitution, and that went on as well. But these were classy places. They had full orchestras. They'd have live radio shows. They'd have entertainment. They would have like a supper club. Men wore tuxedos and suits. It was not shabby about it. And that was very interesting. So it was kind of a swanky places. And so many individuals went there for just a night of entertainment, and many of them went there because I guess they felt that they could get some of the girls, into the room that they really wanted to get them into, the bedroom.
I understand.
But some people they even got married there.
Yeah, I was going to say, we ought to bring this back. Somehow it appeals to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not a
problem. Thing, I think.
Yeah.
We'd have to charge a little more than 10 cents a dance, though.
Yeah, I guess you would have to. But I don't know. You think about it. You could go there and you get to see what who you're dancing with and what they talk about, and
right.
You have to have an orchestra. This is something. See, sometimes you bring back the good old days, right?
I think so. I think there's a lot to that, without a doubt. Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, radio is still one of the best means. It's the most popular means of talking because we have TV, but it's still a wonderful way, and we have a lot of listeners. And radio is a good medium.
I love talk radio. I grew up on talk radio. A few of my aunts were disabled, and even though we had TVs and whatnot, they listened to talk radio all the time. And then I would be with them and listen to the talk radio. Again, hearing stories from talk radio. I still listen to talk radio today, whether I'm in my car or not.
Right.
I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, I agree. I do the same thing. I put on usually NPR or something on the radio, and I like it too. And my father, I remember as he was aging, he would have the radio on all the time, and he would just be listening to all these broadcasters, and
right.
And I don't know if it just kept people company or that sometimes you can't listen and listen and listen. You're doing other things, but that's what it did for people when television was okay, but it wasn't the same as radio.
No, it's completely different, and a lot of times it was used for background noise, a little chatter, but you'd pick up and you'd hear something, even though you're doing multitasking, you hear what they're saying. You might stop and listen to what they were saying. I think there's a lot of interest. I wish the young people would get into listening to talk radio. That's one of the reasons why my chapters are so short, is because I know that a lot of young people don't like to read because they'd rather be playing games and whatnot. But I remember when I was with the bank, one of the things that I did was I volunteered to read and go into the schools, and we had a reading program. I would read to the kids.
Wow. And
their attention span was really kind of short.
Yeah.
But I figured even for adults today, I think they say that the average attention span to grab someone attention, you have 45 seconds. And that's why I kept the chapters so short. I think
Smart.
one chapter even has like one sentence in it.
Oh, that's short. Well, let me and we're going to have to go, but I just wanted to ask you quickly, had you considered someone reading your book and putting it on tape?
I have. It's just that it becomes expensive.
I see. Well, wait till your series comes for Johnny Zero, maybe, and then it'll work out. But it's always great talking to you, Fred. I'm glad you're having a good life up in Port St. Lucie, and I want everyone to go to Amazon.com and look up the name Cousins Bad Blood, and the author, my guest this morning, is Fred Berri, Berri, and we'll look forward to some of his other books. And Fred, have a great holiday season coming up, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Anita. It was great speaking with you, and I wish you and Bill much success and health.
Thank you so much, Fred. The same for your family and you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.